You ever watch a game where everything that could go wrong for one team does, and then weirdly, the scoreboard makes it look tidy and inevitable? That was Sunday at Lambeau. The Packers won 23-6, and the Vikings they'd watched a bad dream on Loot watched a bad dream. Green Bay didn't need fireworks. They needed mistakes to pile up in front of them, and the game obediently delivered. From the first whistle, the tone was old school and nasty. Emmanuel Wilson, a guy who stepped into a bigger role and refused to be polite about it, ran like the whole afternoon belonged to him, ripping off a pair of touchdowns and clearing 100 yards. When your backup running back turns into a headline, it usually means one thing. The plan you drew up on Monday stopped mattering once the whistle blew. Green Bay's rush took over and made the rest of the game feel like damage control for Minnesota. ESPN.com. But this wasn't just about one breakout runner. The real cinematic beat that tilted the contest happened on a punt that should have been routine. Miles Price elected not to field a Daniel Whelan kick, tried to block, and the ball bounced into misfortune. Zayne Anderson shoved his blocker into Price's lap, the ball ricocheted, and Anderson scooped it up at the Vikings' 5-yard line. 2 plays later, Green Bay punched it in. Turnovers like that are cheap, brutal currency. They buy you points, momentum, and the right to sit back and watch someone else's confidence disintegrate. SI Minnesota's offense, led by J.J. McCarthy, had none of the orchestra's grace. He finished with 12 completions for 87 yards, 2 interceptions, and multiple sacks. A stat sheet that reads like a diagnosis: overwhelmed, indecisive, and inconsistent. McCarthy has shown flashes, but when a rookie is facing constant pressure, holding the ball too long becomes a habit and decisions grow rushed and punished. This wasn't just a bad day for one quarterback. It looked like a staff and unit who never quite found a way to keep him clean or to make their small advantages count. Star Tribune. There's an ugly little logic to losing in the NFL. The mistakes compound. Minnesota managed a couple of long field goals from Will Reichard and had the briefest flirtation with life in the first half. But after the muffed punt, the game's psychology shifted. The Vikings went from "we can grind this out" to "don't lose the next possession." And that kind of tentativeness shows on film. Penalties, mental errors, the sort of self-inflicted wounds that make fans groan in unison piled up, and the Packers simply punished those moments with controlled football and a defense that made every short field count. Star Tribune, Green Bay's defense did its part without needing a single heroic stat line from one pass rusher. They pressured McCarthy enough to force bad throws, and their second to turn 2 second-half series into interceptions that wiped the Vikings' momentum clean. Jordan Love didn't carve the Vikings apart with a masterpiece. He managed the game like a veteran would. Efficient, mistake-free, and aware that sometimes a win is about not letting the opponent outwork you. That discipline, the kind that looks boring in highlight reels but devastating on Sundays, won the day. ESPN.com. Now let's get honest about what this means for Minnesota. This wasn't one fluke drive or an unlucky bounce. It was a pattern. Poor situational football, special teams breakdowns, and a quarterback who's still learning to survive the NFL's heat. You can paper over losses with "it's a long season" rhetoric, but the tape doesn't lie. When your offense can't move consistently and the special teams gift the opponent the ball inside the 5, you're going to lose a lot of nights like this. That's not doom. It's a roadmap of what to fix. And for Green Bay, this was the kind of win that quietly changes a mood. A 7-3-1 record after a game like this says 2 things. Your depth held up, and your defense is capable of making opponents look smaller than their hype. When backups and role players show up and produce, coaches sleep easier. When your team wins the ugly ones, you keep the door open for December. The trick now is sustainability. The league will keep testing whether this was a one-off boom or a genuine identity shift. Reuters. If you walked out of Lambeau with one image burned into your brain, picture the bounce, a punt that shouldn't have mattered, turning into the bright, ugly moment that broke the game. Football loves that cruelty. It is a sport where a single unlucky ricochet can rewrite an afternoon. The Packers took that moment, ran with it, and made Minnesota pay. For the Vikings, the classroom opens tomorrow. Film, accountability, and the long work of cleaning the little mistakes that compound into losses. For Green Bay, it's a breath and a reminder. Defense, toughness, and opportunism still win football games. Yardbarker.com. So here's the takeaway. The scoreboard was tidy, but the story wasn't. It was a messy, painful lesson for a young Vikings team and a tidy, textbook victory for a Packers squad that knows how to squeeze value out of other people's errors. That's the league's oldest trick. Don't outscore your opponent. Make them lose. When it works, it looks elegant. When it happens to you, it looks like a nightmare. You ever watch a game that feels like two different seasons smashed into one afternoon? Green Bay walked into Lambeau looking tidy and left having turned Minnesota's late season optimism into a cautionary tale. The Packers rolled 23-6, Emmanuel Wilson ran like a man trying to prove he belonged, and the Vikings spent the second half doing everything except playing clean, winning football. ESPN.com, Wilson was the kind of surprise you love in November. Thrust into a starting role with Josh Jacobs out, he answered like he'd been waiting his whole career for the spotlight. 107 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, physical between the tackles, and sneaky explosive when the seams opened. He didn't need to be a hero, he just needed to be reliable, and he delivered the kind of ground control that let the Packers play the game they want to play. Steady, nasty, and methodical. ESPN.com. The real turning point wasn't X's and O's so much as one chaotic special teams moment. A low punt caromed off Minnesota return man Miles Price, and the ball bounced right into Zayne Anderson's hands at the Vikings 5. Green Bay converted that gift into a quick touchdown 2 plays later, and just like that, the tone of the game flipped. Those are the tiny, ugly plays coaches mention in locker rooms. Momentum doesn't always come from brilliance. Sometimes it arrives by accident, and when it does, it swings everything. Packers.com, credit the defense. Micah Parsons and Devonte Wyatt harassed J.J. McCarthy all day, turning what could have been a manageable passing afternoon into an exercise in damage control for Minnesota. The Packers' front seven clogged lanes, generated consistent pressure, and forced 2 second-half turnovers that ended Minnesota drives cold. When your D turns scarcity into abundance, the offensive mistakes look catastrophic. That's exactly how Green Bay made a 10-6 game feel like a blowout by the fourth quarter. ESPN.com. And then there's McCarthy, who never found a rhythm. The rookie finished 12 of 19 for 87 yards and late interceptions that made an already rough afternoon feel like a meltdown. He looked small under pressure, holding the ball, throwing into traffic, and failing to move the chains when the game required him to. To be fair, schematic help matters, but elite protection and play design are basics. When those aren't there and you're asking a young QB to will his team forward, the result is often the same: stalled drives and a scoreboard that never reflects potential. ESPN.com, special teams and mistakes stacked against Minnesota. Penalties, a baffling end-of-half sequence where the Vikings nearly tripped over themselves, and that punt bounce all contributed. You don't need fireworks to beat a good defense. You need discipline. Today, discipline wasn't on the Vikings' checklist, and Green Bay cleaned up the mess. That's how a 23-6 score happens when you're watching play-by-play rather than highlight reels. CBS Sports, Jordan Love didn't have to be a magician. He didn't need to be. He managed the game efficiently, 14 of 21, 139 yards, let the run game do heavy lifting, and made a few third-down completions that kept drives alive. When your ground game is humming and your defense is eating everything the opponent throws at you, quarterbacks convert from star to manager in the best way possible. That model wins games in November. ESPN.com, what does this mean for both clubs going forward? For Green Bay, it's a tidy boost, 7-3-1, and control of momentum in the division. You can see a blueprint. Run the ball, clog passing lanes, create ugly plays, and grind opponents into mistakes. If they stay healthy and keep converting short-term advantages into wins, the Packers' ceiling is real. For Minnesota, the alarm bell is loud. At 4-7, this team needs clarity on quarterback development, run game reliability, and, crucially, how to stop gifting games away on special teams and mental errors. ESPN.com coaching takeaways are simple. The Packers stuck to identity and got rewarded. The Vikings have to clean the fundamentals. Shore up protection for the rookie QB, get creative in the run game to take pressure off McCarthy, and for the love of football, stop letting the small things become game-defining mistakes. Turnovers and short fields are killers. Clean them up and you're back in it. ESPN.com. If you're a fan, here's your short mental checklist. Celebrate the run game and defense if you're in Green Bay. If you're in Minnesota, don't panic, Zach, but don't pretend everything's fine either. This team needs purposeful offseason upgrades, clearer play calling under pressure, and fewer fluke losses that add up to a lost season. Final thought, football doesn't reward pretty intentions. It rewards consistency and the team that forces the other side into mistakes. Today, the Packers were the steadier, nastier, cleaner team. The Vikings, they were the ones who made the small errors compound into a day they'll replay until they fix them. ESPN.com.